Hi there, and welcome to the 6th episode of the J&J Politics Pod. Today we're going to be covering numerous topics, including affirmative action, Elon buying Twitter, and the Paul Pelosi attack. So, Jack, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, you have a very good podcasting voice.
Thank you.
Okay, affirmative action. We're covering that because the Supreme Court is looking at it now, and it is looking likely like they're going to overturn it. So affirmative action is a decision that basically universities are allowed to discriminate admissions based on race. What's happening right now is anti-affirmative action activists are suing Harvard over this because they say it unfairly discriminates against Asian Americans.
Yeah.
And something actually that's important to know about this that came out during the Supreme Court hearings was that, so this law is based on a 2003 law, which weirdly enough, the judge said, so when he passed this 2003 law, he said it should probably phase out in like 25 years. So in 2028, this isn't legally binding, but it's seen as kind of like a weird precedent thing where they say, okay, in 2028, affirmative action should probably be relooked at and we should reassess it. So there are some weird signs, like Kavanaugh and Barrett said this, like during the hearing, they were like, oh, but it's not 25 years yet, right? So some people say, oh, maybe it looks like it won't be overturned because these very conservative judges don't believe it's time to do it, but in all likelihood, it will be overturned. Really quickly, I want to say why some people think it's good or bad, just generally. So a lot of people say affirmative action is good because you're giving a leg up to African Americans who have obviously been, disadvantaged way more than, Asian Americans or white Americans through their history. And why it's bad, it unfairly discriminates against Asian Americans in particular. And also because minorities are doing better now in many, many aspects than they were when this was implemented and, 50 years ago and 20 years ago and better than before, right? So what's your opinion on this?
So I guess we can start off with my general opinion of affirmative action because you and I kind of have spoken a little bit about this. But so my main kind of statement is that I support racial-based affirmative action. And I also think that we should have affirmative action that is based on socioeconomic status. So I think that both should be important factors in affirmative action, which is the case at some universities, not all. And I think that affirmative action is a good thing for a couple reasons. One, it remedies past racial injustices. And I think to kind of say, oh, well, we should phase it out because the issues are getting less bad is pretty tone deaf to a lot of the issues that we're currently still seeing. Like, for example, black people are like twice as likely to be homeless. Black people are largely discriminated against in the criminal justice system. They have much worse educational opportunities, which this kind of fixes. And the list kind of goes on, right? And I also think that the other good parts of it are that it cultivates strong or positive cultural values, and that it boosts economic efficiency. And I can kind of get into these points if you want me to later on. But I think in order to kind of remedy I think it's good that it remedies the social injustices against black people. And I think to kind of keep that principle of remedying social issues and creating equity, that's why you need to include the socioeconomic aspects of it. The issue is, so some people will come out here and say, well, then why don't we just have socioeconomic as the factors play the big role in affirmative action? The issue with that is is not helpful for remedying racial injustices. So if you implement a socioeconomic affirmative action, it doesn't actually increase or help with racial diversity in higher education.
Well, doesn't that help minorities because on average minorities are more socioeconomically disadvantaged?
No, it doesn't, and here's why. So one, white kids who make I think the familial income is $10,000 a year. They score about 120 points higher on the SAT in both categories than black kids do at the same level of income. So white people already have an advantage there. And number two, there's a lot more, just numerically, white poor kids than there are black kids, and so that you also have to think about that, right? If you eliminate the racial aspect, then there's just a ton more white kids who are poor than black kids. But just even if black kids make up a higher percentage of their population being poor, white kids, there's just more of them, and therefore that would disadvantage black people in the process. And this is the data backs my point up. Socioeconomically based affirmative actions do not help the racial diversity of higher education. That is just a fact.
But
so it just kind of proves it's not really a point that I need to argue. Like it's just.
Yeah, and I agree with you, but then maybe that shouldn't be the goal, right? I think we're talking about two different goals. I would argue that's socioeconomic, measuring socioeconomics and giving them a step up in applying for college, like what affirmative action is now with race, is good because it's helping the least disadvantage, right?
I 100% agree.
So I think we should help. That's why I think I'd like, using income or however you want to measure it. It's more complex than that, right? Because you're helping the poor get into college as opposed to based on their skin color. I don't know if now is the time to get rid of affirmative action because it has worked.
Yeah,
I know
it does
in states
work,
there's like 7 states that got rid of it, and their diversity is going down. It has gone down. It's almost like halved actually.
So I'll just add on to that. So that's why I think my proposal would be having the two-pronged approach in affirmative action, implementing racial affirmative action along with socioeconomic status affirmative action. Because there was a simulation done by like a group of like PhDs from like a bunch of different schools in the United States, and they essentially simulated based off like 10,000 students in 100 colleges affirmative action and the different types of affirmative action and how it affects and it analyzes the students and their qualifications. It's pretty much everything that has to do with what we're talking about right now. And it found that schools that implement only racial affirmative action, there's not much diversity in socioeconomic status. So essentially what happens is you have black kids who are incredibly wealthy who get in. And then the reverse of what Jack's talking about is socioeconomic status with no racial one. What happens is there's very little racial diversity, which means that you kind of shut out black people from getting higher education. So that's why my kind of proposal would be including both, because when they included both in the simulation, both categories rose. So you had much more socioeconomic diversity and much better racial diversity. And then to anybody who's sitting here thinking, well, then that's also kind of bad, because then you have these kids who got in quote unquote just because they're poor or just because they're black. However, they also analyze the success of the students and compare them to their classmates and their quote unquote qualifications, and the performance of people who are beneficiaries of affirmative action in both the workplace and school. The difference in performance is so little that it's nil pretty much. Like people are able to thrive regardless.
Because we were thinking about this. I know. So in terms of popularity, it's like 6 out of 10 Americans don't like affirmative action. They actually want it to be overturned. Yeah. And when you look at the numbers, African Americans like it the most, but it's like 47-53. It's very, very close. Hispanics, 60 to 40% don't like it. So 60% of them don't like it.
And we talked about this.
Yeah, we did. And it's because they don't like handouts, right? And you can chalk it up to a whole lot of reasons. A lot of them, their grandparents come from socialist countries that had a lot of handouts, and it didn't work out for them, and it's very like ingrained in their mind, right?
Yeah, and
so
also
that could be a reason.
The cultural values.
It's a cultural thing, like all of these things.
Yeah,
right?
but I don't think that we should factor that in. No offense, but I don't think we should factor that into what works best for society and providing reparations for past wrongdoings. This is just this benefits the welfare of our society, and regardless of whether, what did you say, 60% of Hispanic people don't like it, I still am going to support it because it benefits them regardless, and it's a good thing for the economy. It's a good thing for remedying past wrongs. And I can get into the economic benefits too.
I do think we don't need to like debate it that much, but I do think it's interesting you said reparations. I don't know if people see it, affirmative action. They are aware that is kind of what it's doing. I feel like people who even support affirmative action might not support reparations, right? Because this is kind of reparations, right? You're giving a leg up to disadvantaged, especially African Americans specifically, right? Did people who voted for affirmative action want it to be reparations? I don't know if that's how they see it, or I don't know.
Does that matter? Because here's why. Because it's a form of reparations, and it's been explained to them why it exists, and
Yeah.
they voted for it and said, yes, I like it. So yes, they do support it because it is a form of
Yeah, that's true.
reparations. They might because then there's people talk about giving like $10,000 to every black family as reparations, which I don't know a whole lot about. I don't think it doesn't really solve the problem. I think things like affirmative action solve the problem.
Yeah.
But and so just because I support this type of reparations doesn't mean I support other types of reparations.
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
I think just the last thing is, if you want to if you recognize that there are racial disparities in this country and they are a result of past wrongdoings, I think you should want to kind of remedy that, in my opinion.
Yes.
At least I do. And I think education is the best way to do this.
And people
this
actually agree with you.
Yeah,
like,
this is a fact.
People think you should do that.
Education
it might
is the
not
best
be
way,
affirmative action how you do it, but yeah.
It's the best way to avoid drug use. It's the best way to avoid poverty, homelessness,
things. I will
criminalization,
say,
everything.
The fact that it is unfair. So to Asian Americans, I understand it, right?
Yeah.
Why do they have to be punished, right? Because other people are given a leg up. I understand that.
I think.
That was a rhetorical
sorry.
a little bit. And then another one, anecdotally for me, right? I'm Mexican, but I definitely did not live the stereotypical Mexican life, right? I was given a leg up.
Yep.
Right? To get into the school, I should not have at all.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And you could say, it's a minority and blah, 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 blah. But it isn't, it isn't fair. That's like objective. Mm-hmm. So then it's how much does fairness actually matter in this case? That's why I like the socioeconomic one. I don't know if you can, the mixing of it, I don't know how that works racially and like measuring their income or whatever.
They discriminate based on both factors.
I don't know how that works.
It's already instituted in a couple of quite a few organizations, and it's just an affirmative action that takes in both. It's pretty simple. Like, think about it. Like, you say, okay, this person's applied, they're black as well. Then this is a thing that we should take into consideration. Or you do, they're poor as well. Why not? It's very simple. And they do this. They just combine the two. So they would look at you and they would say, and I don't mean to, obviously it's less binary than this, or maybe it's not, but they would say, okay, he's Mexican, but then he's also wealthy.
So it cancels
out. Which it kind of, I think, and obviously it's a little tough with that, but I think generally it is a good thing, because then you get people you don't just have elites in certain ethnic groups benefiting, and you don't just have white people benefiting, because at the end of the day, I do think affirmative action is a great reparation. I do, and I think that's an important part of it in the goal. I think one thing too, because you brought up Asian Americans there was like 2 studies I read on this, and both of them. What?
No, nothing.
I know, I did. I did my research, dude.
Mm-hmm.
So Asian Americans benefit heavily. Let me actually look, because I have this written down. Asian Americans benefit heavily from if it was just socioeconomic status. So Asian Americans would perform incredibly well on higher score. They have much higher scores.
Yeah.
Much higher scores, but there's also a lot. So you know how I said earlier, 10,000 is like for 10,000 income for a white person, they do like 100 points better than a black person at the same level of income. That's what I said earlier. And Asian Americans, the same level of income, they have like 300 points higher than white people and black people. Mm-hmm. So they would benefit a lot if we just changed it to socioeconomic, because you would just they would just destroy everyone in it. And then I think with the racial one, I don't really. Can you like tell me a little bit more about how they're impacted by the racial one? Because I know that it disadvantages them, but is that because they have so much representation in higher education?
So one reason is Asian Americans are like the model minority, right?
Yeah, but that's like a myth, though.
Over and over. Yes, but no. Like, what do you mean it's a myth?
I mean, the model.
They're seen as that. Their median income is higher.
Yes, but it's like that's about like the model.
Sure,
I'm just sorry. It's not a great like. I'm just saying.
Word.
Like
anecdotal.
Yeah,
I know it's gotten like
semantically.
A lot of hate recently. Yes, but when you look at schools that use affirmative action and schools that don't, the percent of admissions is like in both cases is 50% white. So white people are basically not touched for this, and then it's like the one that uses affirmative action is I'm making these numbers up, but something like 8% Hispanic, 14% Black, and the rest African American.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sorry, Asian American.
Oh, Asian American, sorry.
And in the other side, it would be maybe half Hispanic, so 4%, and half Black Americans, so 7%, and the rest would be Asian Americans. So the point is, if you can think of an affirmative action, this is how you group minorities. So there's a lot of Asian Americans, and they're the big minority. and there's a little bit of Black and Hispanic Americans, and they're the smaller minority. And as Black and Hispanic increases, Asian decreases.
Yeah.
And vice versa, right? So
Yeah.
So I mean, this undoubtedly discriminates against Asian Americans, right?
Mhm.
Because,
Yeah, of
because
course.
you're not even
It also
away
discriminates.
at the
It
white,
also
at the white
discriminates against
Americans.
white people as well.
Not even, but by 1%. It's like
Okay, well,
it's
okay,
like
yeah.
almost a negligible amount, right? It barely chips away at white Americans. It chips away disproportionately
in their
at white.
in the population of them attending
Admissions,
schools.
yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah, but that also makes sense. The thing I think that I go back to is, it's like, it is here's my take on this, right? To do nothing is to just allow for inequity to continue to exist, right?
Yeah.
So if you remove affirmative action, Asian Americans will get a bunch of educational opportunities, and Black people won't. And the reason Black people won't is because of past problems, because of all these issues that have been created by our government and our society that have contributed to the reason as to why they're not getting an education. Whereas the Asian Americans don't have that. So they would just dominate in their education.
Mm-hmm.
If you provide a program in which, yes, it hurts Asian Americans, but this kind of goes back to the economic efficiency. Let me actually find my point here.
Let's wrap this one up.
Yeah, I know, but this is a good point, Jack. This is
Yeah.
important. This is
Sorry,
actually important.
Continue.
Yeah. Those who get a boost from affirmative action gain more in added income, greater economic opportunity, and increased social mobility than is lost by those who might otherwise have filled those spots. And that's a fact. That is a fact that has been studied and researched, and that is true of Asian Americans and white people. They lose less than is what is gained by Black people who get those opportunities.
Right, economically.
Yes, and if you want to look at that from a utilitarian point of view, you want to look at that from an economics point of view, I think it makes a great case for
But then you're
affirmative action.
justifying it based on economics instead of on like racial equity, right? Or equality.
No, I'm justifying it based on multiple things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have like multiple, like, I don't know if you want to just like, I think I make a good point. I don't know.
Yeah.
You
I
want to
agree.
continue, but I'm pushing you. I'm pushing you on this. I want you to have
I
want you to make a have a conclusion on this.
Yeah,
like, I want you
my take on affirmative action is, I don't know if it's the right time to do it now. Maybe we still have, I don't know, 5 to 10 years of it, but it is something that has to go away someday.
But
and I think it would be good if it is replaced by something like maybe a mix of race and socioeconomics, or just socioeconomics. I don't know if today is the day to do it, but at some point, undoubtedly, it is.
well, then what's that threshold though?
Well, I don't know. That's not for me to decide. That's kind
I think it should. But you
have
like I think you can have you can have an opinion on this. Like,
we're getting close, because equality is
it's so far apart though.
Inequality between races is closing.
It's so far,
so then,
dude. That's terrible. That's not true.
Okay, it is closing, but do you want it to be?
But it's so far though.
Yes, but then do you want it to be when they're equal? Then you stop.
Yes.
I don't
yes,
know.
that makes
I'm
so
not
much.
sure.
That makes so much more sense than closing it soon, because we're so far away. We're so far away.
We need to talk about Twitter. So
Yeah.
tell people what's happening with Twitter right now.
Okay. So Elon Musk bought Twitter. What is it? Jack knows a lot more. But $44 billion.
So
yeah.
$54.2
There
of
you go.
stock, because it's a meme for 20.
Okay.
He's a very memey guy. But anyway, he bought Twitter. So it was complicated.
Yeah.
He bought Twitter, or so he says, because it's the public town square, right? Yeah. So he wants it to be a free place. He doesn't like a lot of censorship. He wants freedom of speech, all these things, or he claims at least. He wants people to speak more freely. Yeah. Then he bought it, or he was going to buy it. He signed the contract. He tried to get out of the contract. Twitter sued him to not get out of the contract and forced him to buy Twitter. And then he was losing in court, and he said, okay, you know what? Let's just buy it. And he bought Twitter. And he's been chief tweet, as he calls himself, for a couple days. And he actually, today, he fired half the staff. And he's had a lot of just ideas. I'm sure we'll get into this, but, the $8 checkmark thing. Yeah. I don't even know what ideas he's had. He has a lot. He
wants to he wants less censorship.
Elon Musk, what are the feelings and emotions?
I think he's a bit of a tosser. Like, I think he's a bit of an egomaniac, and he's very dislikable because he doesn't come across as genuine. Though I do think that his intentions in buying Twitter are based in what he thinks. Like, I think he does want to buy Twitter because he wants to do good. Just like how I think he does a lot of his organization, creates a lot of his organizations.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's weird because I'd like to believe. So this is what I would have said.
Yeah.
I would have said, Elon Musk really does want to do good. Like,
Yeah.
he wants to do what is best for humanity, right? Within the ideas he surrounds himself with.
Yeah.
So he thinks the Earth is probably going to die at some point or something like that. So we need to go to Mars, and that will save humanity,
Yeah.
right? If you give that hypothetical, where it's, okay, given this hypothetical that the Earth will be bad, or we will need food at some point, or we will need space or whatever, then it makes sense that we should go to space. So he's going to space, right? Same with electric cars for climate change stuff. Same for Twitter. If you believe there's a lot of censorship and not enough free speech, right?
Yeah.
But then he does some things like building Hyperloop, and it came out. So a reason he built Hyperloop was kind of to kind of undermine like transportation. At least that's what he said. I don't know too much about that.
Yeah, that's like what I remember.
So he's weird. That's what I'll say. He's a weird guy.
Yeah. I mean,
the way he does things is very controversial on purpose because he likes it. He likes that we're talking about him.
And we will, and I think that's a good segue. Into, because Jack and I, unfortunately, we had such a good discussion about this. Sometimes when Jack and I have
ourselves off,
we have such a good conversation about something, and we're like, oh, this would be perfect for the podcast. But we had a great conversation about Twitter, I think, last night, and kind of conclusion that I came to, and I think Jack kind of was almost willing to come to, was that this $8 thing, because this is what's all over the news right now, like this is the big thing that's happening, is that he's charging $8 a month for verification. And
which is the little check mark on your Twitter name.
Little check mark. And I just genuinely don't buy any of the explanations. It's not good for revenue.
Yes.
It doesn't make like any sort of sense in helping with censorship. In fact, one could argue it even hurts it. So I think the big thing there is it just a kind of way to keep Twitter in the news, keep it relevant, keeping people talking about it, because that's what he does at other organizations.
Yeah, the only reason really quickly, the reason it doesn't help revenue is because, one, at first it was $20.
Yeah.
Right? You remember this like a week ago. And he said $20, and it was big news, $20. And then he tweeted with, was it Stephen King or someone? Stephen King was like, I'm not paying $20. And Elon Musk was like, how about 8, right? That's a random, like, he's just like, yeah, whatever. Let's drop it by over 50%. So I don't believe anyone who says he's doing this for money.
I agree.
One, Twitter has like $15 billion of debt.
Yeah.
It's sinking. Like, he's making, I think the number's like, it's less than $1 billion what this verification $8 thing would make. It's irrelevant. Almost negligible.
I agree, yeah.
So it doesn't make sense from a revenue sense. It doesn't make sense from, I don't know if I agree that it makes sense from keeping them in the public eye. They've been in the public eye regardless. He just fired 50% of the staff in one day in a very dicky email.
Yeah.
He tweets random things all the time. He's like, one day he's like, oh, I'm gonna unban Trump, and the next he's like, no, we haven't decided.
And there's
yet.
like a poll on
like
it or whatever.
He can very easily get in the news.
He is the big. This has been big though.
Yeah,
this has been big. This could just be another one of those.
Too big. Twitter is more relevant than I think you and I would like to believe.
Yeah.
There's more people who use like Instagram and every other YouTube and Snapchat than use Twitter.
Yeah. Well, he wants to make Twitter into the WeChat of America, or just the Western world.
He's kind of said that.
He said that in an interview, and I think as a user, I think that's a cool idea. I'd be interested to see that. But we can let's talk about the kind of, because Jack's best argument. I don't want to talk for you, so I'll just. Mm-hmm. What is the best argument for the $8 per month?
Oof, the best argument. So the argument I've heard from people is this idea that when you see a blue check mark, and this is true, you treat them as like gods. What they say is true and is correct and is like, you should respect it, right? Mm-hmm. When we say something, not only because we don't have many followers, but also because we don't have the check mark, it's less of a status symbol thing. Yeah. And taking that check mark away removes that idea that, you know, because I'm a billionaire, or because I'm a celebrity, or because all of these things that I accomplished, then I should be, I am higher than you, kind of. So it's a way to make everyone more equal.
I think with that, it would make sense to either just eliminate the check marks totally, because I think that making people pay for it, I mean, you're just going to have people who are more willing to just drop that money on that. I wouldn't be. I don't know about you. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be. But I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you and say this only helps rich people because it's $8 a month. Like, come on, anyone can pay $8 a month if they want to. So it's just going to be people who want to. I think the best way to do it would just be I think verification itself is a good idea, because we have copious amounts of misinformation, especially on Twitter, which Elon, that's his big, he doesn't like that. Or he's talked about that before. That's not his big issue, but there's a lot of misinformation. And
well, he doesn't like that, but then he tweets after Pelosi's attack.
Yeah,
misinformation.
True,
so I don't know about that.
But generally, nobody likes misinformation.
Yeah.
And I think a better way to combat that is, I think verification is a good way to combat that. If you have good verification, if you are verifying people who are like journalists and people who are like experts in their field, or celebrities, or whatever they're talking about, like football players talking about football or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a reason they have their verification, I'd like to think. And so therefore it allows you to kind of wad through that misinformation a little bit better. But then again, at the same time,
blue check marks do tweet
out misinformation.
Right? So it is a difficult, and it's a difficult thing. I do like Bird, what's it called? Bird tweet. Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the fact checking thing of Twitter.
Bluebird?
I don't remember. Blue Notes?
Bird Notes.
Bird Notes. Yeah, something like that. Yes, Bird Notes.
Yeah.
They tweet out when something's
that's
like
great.
popping off and it's misinformation, which is good. The White House tweeted misinformation and they deleted it after they got a bird note thingy majiggy. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. People, I think, are overblowing. It's Twitter. No one actually.
I agree.
It's not that big.
I'm actually truthfully, I'm not a huge fan of Elon, but I'm a little excited.
Excited to see like a change.
Yes, because I think it'll be interesting to see. I'm not a big fan of the $8 per month, but it doesn't really impact me as a user. But I'm interested to see like what kind of things he adds, because he is an innovative person. He tweeted about bringing back Vine, so all these things can be cool. I'm interested to see.
We'll see what happens.
So next we can kind of get into Paul Pelosi.
Yeah.
This is less fun of a little more sad.
a little more sad.
So Paul Pelosi, who is the husband of Nancy Pelosi, was attacked in his home last week, I think, over the weekend. And he was attacked by he was like a QAnon kind of guy in San Francisco. He broke into their home with a hammer. He was like hitting him, and he was like, "Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" The guy has been arrested. His like bail's like $40,000 or something. I don't even know.
No, without bail. He's
without bail. Sorry, I saw. You know who I saw said that was Charlie Kirk, and he said you should go bail him out for. Yeah, he is verified.
There you go.
He said sorry that, and I can't believe I would use that on.
Wow.
I apologize to the J&J
wow.
listeners that I would do that. But yes, anyways, that's what happened. Any thoughts on that?
It's bad. I'll come out and say it, unlike some people.
Oh yeah,
Republicans
we can talk about that. Yeah,
we will. But what was crazy also, I think, is so Josh and I have talked about political assassinations a little bit.
We are
surprised it doesn't happen, honestly, and it is. We don't want it to happen. It's very good it doesn't happen. But with political polarization being as polarized as it is right now, I'm surprised it doesn't happen with very divisive people, right?
Yeah.
With AOC or with Trump or with these people that are quote unquote radical, or not quote unquote.
Or even Biden. He's not a radical guy, but like I'm surprised
these
anybody.
These things don't happen, right? So the fact that this happened is a big deal. People aren't really. I don't know. We like read the news. People read the news and then they kind of went about their day and went to the gym. But this guy broke into Nancy's house in San Francisco thinking she was there, and his plan, because he said. I was going to ask her all these questions, and if she lied, and the questions were like, for example, was the election stolen? So she would obviously say no, and he would think that's a lie.
Yeah.
And he would say, and if she lied, which again, she quote unquote would lie, even though it's not really a lie, he would break her kneecaps, literally, with the hammer, but not kill her, because he wanted everyone to see that there are repercussions for lying and being this crazy Democrat.
Sick.
So she would have to be like wheeled into Congress, right? That was his plan, his stated plan. He had a hammer.
You think he would have checked where she was?
What?
You think she would have all this planning? You would have checked where she was. I mean, she was in D.C.
I don't know why he didn't. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
But poor Paul Pelosi got the brunt of that.
He got his skull smashed. Like he had to get brain surgery. He is
safe now.
Yeah.
But I think the most kind of, and this is really, it's been disgusting to see, and it's like very it's actually a little surprising, not very, but a little surprising about how the GOP has reacted to this. And I think it's showing that Trump politics are just, it is just, that is it now.
That's normal.
And this, we're going to see that even more of it with people like McCain getting voted out. They have been like blaming Nancy Pelosi. They blame Democrats. They say this. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's bad, but like, look at the crime and that the Democrats have, and but what if somebody did this to a Republican? Like nobody would care. Like who even cares really? When somebody got their like skull caved in for a crazy person who thinks that the election was stolen because of the words of people like the president of the United States.
Yeah.
I think it's and this is just now going to become the status quo, and it's a little concerning because are more things like this going to happen now?
But you know what is interesting? That it is, and people know about this and talk about this. It's not really Trump's. So sure, it's Trump's fault, but it's not even Trump's party at this point, because Trump actually came out and said what happened is bad. He was like, I'm sorry that this happened. Like poor Mr. Pelosi. Right. Same with McConnell, and same with like prominent the big Republicans.
Well, I would separate McConnell from the Trump.
Well, but he's the head of the party, right?
Yeah, yes, but I think he's starting to lose control of it.
That's the point. I think the people who quote unquote started it. I don't know why I've been saying quote unquote so much. I apologize.
That's okay.
Who started it? McConnell, Pence, Trump. These big leaders and Trump. I said that already. What is going on with
You're good, dude. You're good.
They are saying it was bad what happened, while the new Trump Republicans, if you want to call them that, are saying, oh, maybe Democrats shouldn't have let crime get so big in San Francisco, right? Or those kind of things which are not good.
Actually, I'm doing my co-op in San Francisco, so I'd be interested to see if I get mugged. But speaking of the crime, it is a problem in San Francisco. But this is like, if we're being honest, this is not an example of the type of crime that we're talking about. Like when we talk about violent crime, we're talking about we know what we're talking about. I don't really want to list it off, but then when it comes to attempted political assassination, I don't know how San Francisco oriented this is, or if it's just an orientation of the political climate that we're in.
Yeah, it's definitely.
And so that's why I think that's kind of a shitty argument, because I hate to even entertain it really.
Because political assassinations or attacks have nothing to do. I would actually think with normal crime. And
you know what people are pointing to I think it was a bomb threat or like a knife threat on Brett Kavanaugh. People were like at his house or something. And like that was terrible. And it was like scary, and I feel bad for him and his family. I also think that it is weird to just juxtapose that with the Paul Pelosi attack, because first of all, if we're being I don't even really want to buy into the comparison game, but like Paul Pelosi was literally attacked, like he had a hammer hit his skull.
Yeah.
And also, you shouldn't do whataboutism in something like this, in my opinion. But then again, this just goes back to the culture of the GOP. And I think, and this is probably the most partisan that we've been on this podcast, but it is a little concerning. And I also think if you look at some of the statements that the GOP are making, let's finish this will be our last topic, is impeaching Biden for no reason, really. Like no actual reason. They want to impeach him for the sake of impeaching him. And this kind of goes back into the volatility of our political climate. Like it's concerning me now.
I do struggle with it. When you say they, I think we are referring a little more to the radical part of the GOP, which is a very big part of the GOP.
It is the big, there's some who aren't.
It's a very big part. But they've said, the second we get control of the House and the Senate, or just the House, we're going to impeach him for I don't even remember. But
the guy in Arizona said it, the guy who's running in Arizona, Blake Masters, said it was for immigration or crisis at the border.
Crisis at the border or Ukraine or whatever you want to call it, right? But what is interesting is then does this set a precedent that you kind of just impeach the president for whatever, which you can argue the Democrats did at last whenever
they
with
absolutely
Trump,
did,
right?
Absolutely,
because
it bit them in the ass.
Yeah, so I don't know, and this keeps happening. So this is what polarization is and what it looks like in government, right? So Democrats or Republicans do something a little drastic or out of the norm, like impeaching Trump twice, even though maybe that is what you should do, but practically that's not how it's worked before. Or repealing the Hyde Amendment a while ago, or the filibuster for certain things that now it's coming to bite Democrats in the ass, and same for Republicans. So then you just kind of have to scale until something happens, and this is the issue with everything in the world, with Russia and Ukraine, with everything with two actors.
Yeah.
You keep scaling up until either one of them backs down or you get a nuclear something.
Yeah,
right?
and also I was going in hard, a little hard on the GOP. I think they deserve it, but again, like I agree with your point. The impeachment thing, like the Democrats definitely they bit off more than they can chew with that, and it is now coming back to bite them in the ass. I don't fairly, quote unquote. I don't know, not as
Quote
fair,
unquote.
but it's just going, quote unquote. But I don't know. I just think it'll be interesting to see. I don't think Democrats will back down. I was a little when I was younger. I was a little worried that Democrats were weak, but I think that they are starting to show a little bit more teeth. And here's what I have to say: Biden came in, and he was a great person for stepping across, reaching across the aisle, getting people on board. I think he got 16 Republicans on board for the infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill. Yeah.
God, there's so many awesome things.
I know.
Yes.
He has been good. He's tried his best. And it doesn't work in getting them elected. And now we're starting to see, and it's not going to work in getting them elected. It looks like the Senate and the House are going to get flipped.
To be fair, almost nothing works in getting the party in power elected for the midterms.
But they literally switched their messaging. Like Biden came out and started saying he was like listing off Republicans who suck. He was like, these Republicans are hypocrites, and the MAGA Republicans want to destroy our country, and they hate democracy, and all these crazy things that he never would have said 2 years ago. He was like, I'm going to be the president for America.
Yeah, for every American. Yeah.
Which
I think is good.
That was good messaging. That was good messaging for the time, because it was. People wanted unification. Yeah. However, now people want to go back at the team versus the team again. And I don't know if it's going to keep flipping, or we're just going to see this polarization get so bad that like at some point, like it's like nothing gets done until you have like everyone in there, and it's just like bipartisanship is just down the drain, which sucks because we are sponsored by the Bipartisan Disagreement Club.
Yeah, we are.
But yeah, anyways, you if you want to add anything onto that, I'm just concerned about it, me personally.
No, yeah, I'm concerned because I don't know how it ends. I can't see like a rational solution to this, right? Because either so let's say you're the Democratic Party, then you just let the GOP continue to escalate, and you just kind of back down and lose on policies and
you
lose
don't
all
want to
these
do
things.
that.
You don't, so you keep escalating, and then the GOP escalates, and then you escalate, and then you keep going until
collapse
we have
of the
100. You know what? So when the Supreme Court passed or got rid of Roe v. Wade, right? People were like, okay, pack the court. Okay, we can pack the court. Let's get 12 justices in there. And then next year the GOP will get 17, and then we'll have 198 justices, and then you and I will be a justice.
Well, Jack, you know what the Democrats could do. All I'm gonna say, if I was the Frank Underwood of the Democratic Party, once I get control of enough of the Senate, the House, and the presidency, I would end the filibuster, expand the courts, create statehood for both Puerto Rico and DC, and then I would also, in addition to that, I would eliminate the Electoral College, and then if they did do all that, which by the way I think that would be terrible, they would probably be in power for a really, really long time.
Yeah. And then probably get rid of free elections also, just to make sure.
I mean, yeah, because if they do all that, I think a couple of those things you could argue are good, but like if you're doing all those at the same time as culmination, it's like you want to end democracy.
That's very Frank Underwood, very House of Cards.
But anyways, if are there any other topics you want to kind of discuss?
No, you can end us off. You can end us off on this great Friday night podcast episode.
Yeah, so we're gonna go to the gym. We're gonna watch Goodfellas. We're just
we
gonna Game of Thrones. I don't know.
Oh,
we're
yes,
gonna watch.
Thrones.
Brady doesn't want to watch that.
He really wants to leave right now.
Brady wants to leave so bad right now. So I'll wrap this up. Thank you so much for listening to episode 6 of the J&J podcast. Make sure to follow us on Instagram. We've had a little bit of a revamp there.
A little bit. We've changed course 180%.
I know.
Finally, Josh decided to do something about her extremely, pardon my French, shitty appearance after the Bipartisan Club made this incredible post of us. We felt very insecure, and by we, I mean Josh, and then
they got on my ass, and it worked. We've reached out to the Democrat Club. Hopefully they get back to us so we can conduct an interview there. We're also talking about interviewing some professors from Northeastern. So there's big things on the horizons for J&J. But anyways, thank you so much for listening to episode 6. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms, like and subscribe, and see ya.
See ya.